second component that is traditionally adjusted is the hairspring. A metallic hairspring, which is 99% of the production of mechanical watches, is not really precise. That means that no two hairsprings are the same. Even though they are coming from the same fabrication batch, they are not the same. And the critical part is the length of the hairspring, because that gives a lot of the precision of the watch. So that's why during history, watchmakers have invented, such as the adjustment plate and similar devices in order to move the active length of the hairspring. Then, since we had a process that was very precise, we decided to go the opposite way and to tackle the problem at its root. And we even have the two hands that are completely fixed. You see the little squarish forms that you have at the two hands. That means that you even cannot adjust the hairspring, since it's right from the beginning. We redesigned it thanks to our CAD design, and we achieved a precision of plus minus 2 seconds per day, which is quite good, which is even better than the COSC. Then the other problem was and the main problem, I would say that it's one of the main problems that we faced during this project and during this ID One project, was finding the right material for the hairspring. The main trouble with the hairspring is that it's very sensitive to temperature. And the problem is that if it's sensitive to temperature, it won't tell the time correctly at 0 degrees, at 20 degrees, or in the desert at 50 degrees Celsius. The problem was that the traditional materials that are photo-etched, such as silicon, for instance, or carbon crystal, are very sensitive to temperature variations. So we had to go another route, and we had to find the right material that was totally thermocompensated by nature. And we found that material. This is called a zero dur. This is a ceramic glass, which is used also on big telescopes, because dilatation is a major issue for big telescopes. So we decided to choose this material, but then the trouble was to reinvent the process of photo etching, because it's very hard and very difficult to cut. So that was maybe the major challenge on that part. And one other very interesting feature of this material is that it's very lightweight. And being very lightweight, that means that in the vertical positions of the watch, it's less attracted by gravity. And given that, the chronometry of ID One is even better than a good tourbillon in the vertical positions, even though it is not a tourbillon, because it's less attracted by gravity. Lastly, the anchor and the escapement wheel, we decided to do them completely monoblock. Traditionally, the anchor, which is the little part that has the form of an anchor, has two little stones that have to be moved by hand, and you know it's really, really tiny. They are set and glued at the same time in a metallic part. You can imagine that it's very, very, very difficult, and it requires a lot of skill in order to be able to move these tiny parts of hundreds of millimeters. It's really, really tiny. So since we had the right material, the right processes, we designed them fully monoblock, so that you have this very strange form for the anchor, because the pallets are completely fully monoblock in the anchor. So now we are at the middle of the presentation. So we have all the critical parts that we achieved to assemble without any adjustment. The other thing that was very difficult, and the other aim that we wanted with this watch, was that it could cope with all the aggressions of the environment without being serviced. That means that it would have to cope with the shocks, with the aging of the lubrication, which is a real trick for hundreds of years in the terms of watchmaking, with magnetic fields, and with temperature variations. So the first one was coping with the shocks. Shocks is a nightmare for watchmaking for the very beginning, from the very beginning of the history of watchmaking, because you have very tiny parts and they can very, very easily break. And that's why watchmakers have invented devices in order to protect the critical parts. And the most critical part, I would say, is the balance wheel, because the balance wheel is at the same time very large, very heavy, and has very small pivots. So it is the most likely part to break during a shock. And that's why the watchmakers have invented the Inca block or the KIF systems that protects this part. But we decided to go a little further with the ID One and try to protect all the components that give the watch its precision. That means the balance wheel, the escapement, the escapement wheel, and the anchor, all at the same time. So we decided to put them in a carbon crystal cage that you can see up there, a whole cage. We put all the escapement in this cage, and we put this cage on 4 silent blocks, just like in a car, in order to protect all this from every angle, from every direction. So that was the first part for shock resistance. The second part was that we wanted to find a material for the case that could be able to protect the watch itself. So we found an alloy, which is called niobium titanium. It's an alloy of niobium and titanium, which has the very nice property of being very elastic. That means that during a shock, less energy will be transmitted to the escapement. So it acts almost like a damper on a car. It's almost the same. And then we decided to test our watch. So traditionally, there are two kind of tests that are traditionally used in the watchmaking, in the Swiss watchmaking industry. This is called the NIHS test. They have 2 levels. The first one is the standard one, and the watch has to cope with many different accelerations up to 1,200 Gs. The second one is devoted to sport and shock-resistant watches, and that's the denomination. And these watches have to bear up 3,000 Gs acceleration. And for ID One, we decided to go a step further and to go to 4,500 Gs, which means almost like you take the watch and you make a goal swing with the watch. This is called the test of the mouton pendule. The last one, the 3,000 G, is you make your watch fall from 1 meter on hardwood, which is very, very hard. So to illustrate that kind of torture test, I would say, I will show you a little film that was filmed at the manufacturer, where we have a robot that we developed with an engineering school that tries to mimic the wrist of the customer and that makes all these tests. So the first 2 ones that you will see will be with a regular ballon bleu that we have in our line currently. And the last 2 ones are with the real ID One, the one that you will see on display, and you will be seeing the resistance of the watch, and it's the same that is on display. So I'm gonna show it to you right now. So the first ones are with a standard watch. The first are the standard tests. And these ones were made with a real ID One. The first one is 1 meter on hardwood. And you can see Look at the crown, it's amazing. The crown is vibrating like that, and you can see the intensity of the shock that has to cope the watch. Whereas the whole cage, the whole carbon crystal cage, hasn't moved at all. And the last one is the most impressive. It's just like a gold swing with the watch. This is the Mouton Pendule, 4,500 Gs on the watch. And hopefully the watch is still there, since you can see it. It is on display.